So my grandmother was a great cook. And I used to love going over there on Sundays with all my cousins, and we'd walk in the house and it would smell like garlic and onions. And you'd walk into her kitchen and she'd have this oversized stainless steel pot with wooden handles that was given to her by her mother, so she always cooked in it. And we'd be sitting around the table playing cards and eating cheese and meats and bread, and the gravy and meatballs would be cooking on the stove. And yes, it's gravy if you're Italian, okay? It is not spaghetti sauce. You can't even say that word in my grandmother's house. So every now and then, while we're playing cards, she would yell, "Oh, go stir, stir, stir," because you can't let the gravy burn. And one of us would jump up and stir the gravy. And so my grandmother was a product of the Depression. And she had these little rituals that she never let go of. You know, she grew up in an immigrant family and through the Depression. And so when you'd go to a restaurant with my grandmother, she would pull up her, her pocketbook, as she called it. And I don't know if you guys have Italian grandmothers, but they have big pocketbooks. And they have everything in them. There's like hankies and cough drops and knitting needles and a golf ball and like just random things. And she would go to the restaurant and she would take all the sugars and all the jellies and an occasional salt and pepper shaker, and they'd all go in the pocketbook. And she had this other thing that she would do at the sink where she would have 2 buckets of water in the sink, and one was for washing and one was for rinsing. And then she would make the grandkids take those water buckets and go and water the tomato plants. And then she would take those tomatoes and she would make gravy. It's like the circle of life in an Italian house. And so I used to love to stand at the kitchen sink with her, and I would dry while she would wash. And she would sing in this really high soprano-y voice with this twittery vibrato, and it sounded like Maria Callas on like a Victrola player, And she would tell me stories about her Uncle Jack, who was a vaudeville star, and she would tap shoulders with me and she'd say, "That's where we get it from. Go be a showgirl." And I think my grandmother always dreamed of a bigger life, but because of where and when and how she grew up, it just wasn't possible, right? So when I told her, "Gram, I'm going to college and I'm going to be an actor," she was thrilled. And when I got cast in my first show, freshman year, cabaret, and I had a solo, I had the telephone solo, and yes, 3 lines is a solo. Of course, my grandmother came. My entire family came. And it was in a very small black box theater. And it was a very bad cabaret. And that's what you want when you're a freshman trying to make friends, your entire Italian family in the front row. So I came out, and I am dancing, and I have my fishnets, and I got my push-up, and I got my red lipstick on, and my hair is teased, because it was the late 80s, teased. And I'm dancing, and I hear from the darkness of the black box, "Oh, good Lord. What the hell is she wearing?" So I'm trying to ignore it, because I'm going to be a professional one day. And I dance over to my table, and I sit down, and I pick up my phone, and I sing, "Sitting All Alone Like That." And I hear, "Psst, Marylee, honey." "Oh, you happen to catch my eye, sweetheart. She's not talking to me. Honey." And I'm like, "Oh, God. How'd you like to buy a girl a drink?" "Marylee, dab your lipstick. It's too harsh." So I make it to the end of the first act, and she does quiet down, but it was a long first act, and I did tell you it was a very bad show, and we weren't aware that first act shouldn't be close to 2 hours. And my grandmother pulled up her pocketbook, and we're up there singing, and I don't know if you know the show, but the end of Cabaret, first act, it's "Tomorrow Belongs to Me." It's the power of song against the Nazi beliefs, and we are in it. And we have tears in our eyes, and we're standing on the chairs, and we're toasting, and we're singing, and we don't realize it's 2 hours in. And We're in it, and it's Tomorrow Belongs, and she pulls out a large aluminum foil package from her pocketbook. And she starts to open it. Crinkle, 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 crinkle. Calzone? Here, pass. Pass it down. What? What? I got Fig Newtons here. Oh, look, salt and pepper. Here, pass, pass, pass. So eventually I did do some professional shows, and unfortunately my grandmother was too old to travel to see them. And when I was pregnant, she passed away at 98. And that big stainless steel pot sits in my kitchen now. It's on its 4th generation of Italians. And I have a special ritual. And every couple weeks, I'll load the bottom with olive oil and I'll put in my garlic and my onions. And while it's simmering, I have a ritual that I've held for my grandmother. And I go over to my spice cabinet and I pull out a lipstick. And it's as red as Grandma's gravy, and I dab it on. And then I stir, stir, stir.